Hey guys, this is Shining Noctales, and oops, sorry about that. And tonight, I figured it'd be nice to stream some uh, 2004Scape for you guys. Figured it'd be nice to do. Right now, I'm talking to Mystic Mime. He's one of the players that plays 2004Scape, and he's thinking of selling me a whole bunch of Chaos Runes. Let's see. Hold on. I think there's a way you can mute notifications. Just so this way it doesn't keep popping up for me. I don't know if you guys saw those notifications in the video. Yep. I have, oh no, they didn't show up. Good. Okay. Um, yeah, I have someone named Mystic Mime willing to sell me Chaos Runes. I moved over. Oh shoot, I'm getting hit by gnats. No. Okay, hold on. No! I can't believe she didn't accept it. Wow. Okay, let's see. See here. The element? No! At least Clayton accepted it, but see here. See. See here. Ooh, sorry about that. Ooh, sorry about that. Yeah, it's been a busy day for me, guys. I know Matthew was asking what, that was streaming late, but yeah, it's just been a busy day, and also I'm a night owl as well. So this tends to be a good time for me anyways. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I know Mystic Mine was, I'll tell you Watchtower. Yeah, I was talking to Mystic Mime, and he usually sells Chaos Runes for 100 GP each, but he said he was willing to sell them for, well, 85, but I'll see, maybe, because he even mentioned 80 as well. We'll see. He's fine with 400k for 5,000. And if not, we can always figure something else out. Oh, there he is. There's the man, the myth, the legend. Uh, see if he's okay. If not, that's okay. You know what? Well, I gave him not only an eye patch, but 3 gems, and I also gave him a plank. Okay, so I think probably what we're gonna do. Okay, I don't know. I'm surprised I don't have him on my friends list yet. Okay. I like gifting people gems too because, that is my name, Gem Rhymebu, so that's why I like having it like that as well. Oop. Oh yeah, I forgot. No, well, no, well, no, let's get our nature runes. I forgot them. I always tend to forget the nature runes. I'm not sure why. It's there. Oh yeah, oh yeah, I was gonna. I know I talked to you, Matthew, a little bit about my friend Tim on the phone. He lives locally, and I've known him for years. He's a good friend of mine. Um, the first thing he asked was, were the Franks Germans? And so I told him, not exactly, like they are Germanic. And I know sometimes there's a contention between France and Germany regarding who the real descendants of the Franks are, but I told him if you look at modern day populations, they're genetically closest to the French and South Dutch on average. Um, I know some people think Dutch and Germans are exactly the same, like carbon copies. But they're not exactly. But anyways, so yeah, I just told him like the reason why France got its name was due to the Franks. And interestingly enough for me, because I'm closer to the genetically closer to the Lombards, who they said they came from Scandinavia. I told you this. I think I told you Matthew about the story about the Lombardic women who were fighting the Vandals. They communed with Freya, and she told the women to wear their hair like beards. And then when Odin saw that she gave them favor in fighting the Vandals. So I learned recently I'm also related to the Vandals as well. So somehow both the Vandals and the Lombards eventually, I guess they came around in a circle for me, which is not a bad thing because even though there was a time where you know those two groups fought, if you can come together, that's a good thing. Um, and so where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so I think my dad's partner Julie is closer to more Virginian Franks than I am, and I think those would have been more of the I don't know how you would call it, the I guess some of the main Franks that settled France, I think. Yeah, you had West and East Frank, so kind of is with French and German. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, um, when I think of like the Lombards or maybe like some of the Franks, like if I could think of someone it would remind me of, at least partially, well, I feel like Lightning is definitely more than just Frank or Lombard. But I could see that as being part of her ancestry because she is modeled off of a French woman. Um, all I know is that my dad's partner Julie was really close genetically to like more Virginian Franks. I think it was a sample from Northwest Renfilia, which actually I think that's where my dad's grandfather Cleves, his ancestors came from, was from like Cleve, but it was really close to the Netherlands. So, but I guess the sample she had was close to that region as well. But it was like, for her, it was like a more Virginian Frank and Anglo-Saxon was like really like neck and neck for her. Um, I know for me it's a bit different. I'm not as close to Anglo-Saxons as I am to like Lombards and I guess Franks. Um, well, I'm okay with that personally, but know, I only say that because I know like like my dad's wife or partner Julie should always would say I'm Anglo-Saxon white. But I notice when I talk to people from the UK or Britain, it's a little bit different. I feel like people over there, I'll forgive you. I feel like people over there, at least Laura would say to be frank, I never heard her say about her being Anglo-Saxon as much. Um, how about for you, though, Matthew? Is like Anglo-Saxon for people in England, is that like a very important, like integral part of their identity? Because I know a lot of people here in the US say that I'm Anglo-Saxon white. And I even remember someone from England, I think his name was Igiel, and he did mention about the Anglo-Saxons a bit, and that being a part of the English identity for some people. But I just wanted to see like if it's like really something that a lot of people say, because I hear it a lot in the U.S. at least. So, and, and maybe that's why like my dad's partner thought my grandma was a French woman or something. You know, maybe it comes from that ancestry potentially. She did say though the way she lays out her kitchenware when inviting guests is pretty British though, so maybe there's an intersection, you know? Oh, shoot. Didn't mean to get a hit there. Yeah, like I said, we don't really have that much of an interest in our background. Most say we were English, Welsh, or Scottish, some kind of listen in school for 5 seconds, well, not Anglo-Saxon. You do get people who care. Yeah, I just know here, like, at least for my dad's partner, that was something very important to her. But then when I helped her for ancestry, she had a lot more than just Anglo-Saxon. I don't know how she felt about it, because she got like a lot of Celtic, and I asked her, do you feel Celtic at all? And she's like, I don't really know. But but yeah, no, it's something you know, I guess wanted to learn a little bit of because I'm gonna try to see how I can explain it. Most people here don't know. Oh, okay, yeah, that could be it too. Yeah. Um, I was also watching a video, live stream today. But it's cool you take. Well, I do because well, it's been good for me because I think for a while I didn't really understand the kind of the full scope of my ancestry. You know, there used to be people who used to question, even my own family who used to question, you know, uh, if we had Celtic ancestry. It turns out we definitely do, for sure now. Like, there's no question. At least from Iron Age France, for sure. And even a bit from Britain, because I showed you some of those matches I got. Um, and actually, that match in Britain, though, it said I was number three, like out of everyone, like I was the number third closest person to that match from. I'd have to check exactly where in England. I think it was. Let me check. Winterbourne, Kingston, I think. Yes. Yeah, so that sample, it had some Celtic in it for sure. I think there was a Celtic tribe listed there, but it also had the Vandals too. And I said, oh boy, here we go again. Yeah, not many people know the difference between Anglo-Saxon Celtic. Most of us just think that's, oh, medieval England. Okay, yeah. I guess it probably became so intertwined over time, like Celtic and I guess Norse and Germanic especially, that maybe over time people struggle to see more of the difference. And it's not always a bad thing. Um, I just know for me it seems like genetically I'm closest to like Gallo-Celts who lived in Iron Age Gaul or France. But I'm also fairly close to like, of course, like the Aurelians who were, that they go back to like Mycenaean Greece and Troy. So you got some Mediterranean there. Roman Hispania and Roman to me just kind of means because the Romans before the Visigoths they had invaded Spain and they had settled there, and so it's probably where some of that ancestry comes from. Yeah, I've learned more about Celts from you. Never really knew they were. Yeah, no, definitely they were. Well, because before, you know, the Franks and the Saxons and the Normans, and I've learned more about the Avars too, by the way, because I had some Avar ancestry. I don't know if you know much about Hungary's history or Hungarian history. Um, but I was related to these people called the Avars, who also apparently they mixed with the Native Americans too in the medieval ages. I guess that's where you get the what most people think of an Eskimo is or an Inuit, because the Avars they I guess some went west to Hungary because they were fleeing like I think there was like the beginnings of a Turkic empire. I don't know if you know much about the Turks, but I think they had come from like Central Asia. So yeah, some went to Hungary, but they were really related to like Northeast Asians originally. They were like, because remember I told you a bit about I have a bit of Asian ancestry, and so I think they contributed to the Northeast Asian ancestry of the Japanese, like during the Yayoi period. So Yayoi before Kofun. Because if you look at the armor of the Avars and the Samurai, it looks kind of similar. Like it almost seems like they came from a shared background. Um, but yeah, so they went to maybe that's also why some European Americans or even some Europeans look very Asian. Maybe it comes from some of that ancestry from the East. But yeah, so they would have went east to the New World and mixed with people there, the natives. And then someone went west, and then they mixed with I guess people in Hungary. Um, and I had some friends that were like part Hungarian, and so I think I understand them a bit better now, because I really didn't know that part of history that well. Like I guess that's further east into Eastern Europe, really. But yeah, um, but yeah. So okay, so everyone and their dog, exactly. Yeah, I think like honestly the natives I can understand why some of the natives like especially in Mexico why they kind of sometimes have a different view of natives from further north in the US and Canada. Because if you look at the natives further north, you can clearly, I mean, you can see that they had mixed with, I guess, the people from the who came from the steppe during, or well, really Northeast Asia, Siberia during the medieval ages, and maybe that's why, like, so, as you go further north, some natives look a bit more Asian, or clearly Asian. But yeah, so they went there, they went to Hungary, and maybe it even influenced some dragon folklore, potentially. But yeah, so but before them, before the Avars and all that, so if we go back to the time of the Romans, not only Julius Caesar, but maybe even a bit before and after him, uh, you know, there were people who, or there were Romans or Roman legions who did invade Gaul, and that not only include modern-day France, but it also includes Spain and Portugal, or Portugal. So the reason why Portugal was named Portugal is because the Romans named it that because it meant port of the Gauls, or port of the Gaels. It almost sounds like Gales, from Ireland, but they were called Gauls. But pronunciation is so close that it might as well almost be the same. Um, and so because I remember my mom, would always say that she felt like she was a Greek woman in a past life, and that maybe that's where I have some Greek ancestry from. Yeah, because yeah, that's because I think that modern day Greeks, the Greeks who live in Greece nowadays, I'm not saying that they're not like the descendants of the ancient Greeks, but I think when you had like the Avars and the Turks and the Mongolian Empire, all that going through that area, it really changed the landscape of the I guess the ancestors of the people who were there. And so maybe that's why, because when I look at like samples from Mycenaean Greece, like going back to 1500 before Common Era, like the Age of Heroes, you would think they would be genetically closest to modern day Greeks, but it turns out they're closer to Spanish, North Italians, and Portuguese on average. It seems like that seems to be the trend line. Um, but cause yeah, like I don't know if my mom connects a lot with Celts personally. I know she connects a lot with. of course, Greece, France. Well, she loves visiting England. So maybe like my mom, she could have had like a mix of like that ancient Greek ancestry, ancient Greek, maybe even Trojan. Maybe that's where I got some Lombard ancestry from, or maybe even some Frank. Um, and then of course the Visigoths too, because I noticed I had a sample from my mom from Spain. It was later on though, it was like 1000 Common Era, and there was Visigothic ancestry. I don't know if you know much about the Visigoths, by the way, Maffy. A lot of people don't. But the Visigoths, they were have said to have originated from Gotland, from Scandinavia. Um, they were, I think they preceded the Vikings or the Norsemen. They were there before, allegedly, from what it looks like. Um, yeah. So, interestingly enough, with the Visigoths, there was someone from, I don't know if she was from Ireland or if she was from England. But you could see that she was not that far away genetically from the Visigoths. So it seems like they may have influenced Britain and Ireland to an extent as well. I don't know how much, but I could see like in the match, at least with the Visigoth ancestry, it was really also close to Irish, Scottish, English, Welsh. So I don't know, maybe some went to Spain and some went to Britain and Ireland. Um, and then, of course, you also have the Ostrogoths who went to Italy. Um, I know they're not mentioned as much either. I don't know if in Italy they talk about them more, but I think even though I had those matches, I think I was still genetically closer to like, well, I don't want to call them Franks because they were really. I mean, they might have been close to them, but I guess they would prefer to be called Lombards. Um, so yeah, but it seemed they at least shared some kind of ancestry. Like they weren't carbon copies, but they weren't like 1,000 miles away from each other either. So and then I think I also was related to like the Cheruski. I don't know if you ever heard of Hermann Siegfried. Um, See, the interesting thing about that is my dad also got a match with the Cheruski. Um, I don't know if you've heard Francia or the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah, so the Cheruski, um, you may have not have heard about the Battle of Teutoburg. This is in Germany, by the way, and I think in the northwestern central part. And so when the Romans were invading Germania, when they wanted to, because there was a time where they wanted to conquer it, there was a man by the name of Hermann Siegfried that kind of laid a trap for the Roman legions. And essentially, I know my friend Ben says it was such a tragedy that Julius Caesar lost 3 legions that day. But I told him, well, it's kind of a tough subject to talk about because you have this huge invading Roman army coming, and you have, yeah, I've heard of the fella. Yeah, and so and then I think Hermann Siegfried also had served in the army as well in the Roman Empire during the time of Caesar. I think that's where they get the name Kaiser in German. I think it's from Caesar, I think. I'd have to look. But anyways, so he, like, he was a Roman officer, but when he had heard that the Julius Caesar was sending his legions to Germany, he essentially kind of defected in a way, or he laid a trap, for the Caesar's legions. And so when they went into the forest of Teutoburg, yeah, no, I was also thinking Teutoburg, but I think they over there they might say Teutoburg. So um, yeah, he laid a trap in the forest because I think the Roman legions weren't used to fighting in that terrain. And so that day, 3 Roman legions were lost. And so when that happened, I think Julius Caesar cursed Hermann Siegfried, or his other name was Arminius. Um, He said he would say, "Curse you, Arminius, for costing me my 3 legions." Um, I would say, well, maybe it wasn't such a good idea that you tried to invade that area, that area, you know. I know my friend Ben tends to look at it more with sorrow. He said, it was a pity they lost 3 legions. I just had to say, well, probably not the smartest idea to invade that region. You know. But anyways, but I think genetically, the Cherusci, at least if you look at modern day populations, they're genetically closest to the French and South Dutch as well. So it's interesting that, even though like they were like a Germanic tribe in Germany, nowadays they're closer to the French and South Dutch. So I know a lot of people also went through Germany during later on during the medieval ages. Like you had the Huns, you had the I don't know if Avars got there or people from or the Mongolian Empire. Um, and you also have the Scalaveni or the Slavic people. I tend to prefer to say Scalaveni, but yeah, like it just shows like how people well, of course they change, over time. And so it's interesting to think about. Trying to think of what else. Give me a sec. Oh yeah, I also had the Thuringians too. The Thuringians, I don't know if you know much about them. Um, but there's like a place in Germany called Thuringia, which is like the Emerald Heart of Germany, because I guess of the forest over there. And it was said that they had mixed with women from the East, or well, this might be one connection with the Japanese, maybe. Not trying to say it in a negative way, but because I know some people poke at me at that and try to steer it in a positive direction. Um, yeah, I'll get to that in a wee bit. Tacky. So yeah, so the Thuringians have said to have been a Germanic tribe that when they were fighting the Huns, sometimes after they fought the Huns, they would marry some of the Hunnic women. And it seems like again the Hunnic women were definitely of East Asian origin, or had come from the East. I notice even some of the natives also have a similar ancestry, like with the Thuringians. So you can clearly see that they not only went west into Europe, but they also went east into the New World, even before Christopher Columbus and all that. Um, and yeah, so that might be another reason why I'm connected. Yeah, he's my cousin. I'm pretty famous. Yeah. So yeah, so the Thuringians. I know the Germans are not going to be. You know what? I'm honestly okay with it. If they get upset, that's fine. That's their problem. The Thuringians were also genetically closest to the modern day French and South Dutch. So you notice a pattern here with these Germanic tribes that usually, on average, they tend to be genetically closer to French and South Dutch. Um, and I can hear them say, "No, we're German," and I'm like, "You're not only German, you know." I know I have an uncle named Herman, but it doesn't. I think my uncle Herman would say it don't work like that or something. But yeah, no, like it just shows like the intersections. It shows like how we're more related than people think. Or like, and that's what Maffei is saying too, that we're cousins. Yeah, that's what people call him, Herman the German. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy my Uncle Herman because he's very. I mean, he spent like 40 years with the Cherokee in the North Carolina, the Native Americans, and I've learned so much from him regarding that. Um, and he calls me Celtic healer. That's what he calls me. He doesn't call me German. He calls me Celtic healer. And honestly, I'm okay with that because I think, there's a lot of people here in the US that will say they're German, and that's okay, but you could be more than that. Um, and it's a good thing to be more than that, of course. Um, yeah, and so, he connects a lot with the Cheruski. I told you about Herman Siegfried. Sorry, I misheard my words. And he says in his mind that the Cheruski and the Cherokee are kind of similar. Um, I guess with the way maybe they interact or something like that. But yeah, so um, like I think for me, I'm gonna try to see how I can word this. Um, I think the reason why I talk about this too is because a lot of times, for example, when the French are mentioned by the Germans, it tends to be kind of not so nice generally. You know, like they kind of, I don't know, like even when I know someone from Germany, from Bavaria, and he thinks that Bavaria is the only place that matters in Germany. I guess he, never really heard of Cleves before. But when I told him I had a DNA match that said not only German but also French, like French and German, he's like, "Why did they put them together?" And I said, "Well, that's what the DNA tests, saying, French and German." Um, but I think like it's good to know like um, the ancestry also of like the French and the Dutch as well, and how they also moved around too, because of course, they also have their own history, and I think, well, it's important to recognize that. And I told you, I don't know if I told you this, Maffey, but most of the Germans I spoke to don't know where Cleve is in Germany, but a Dutch person knew where it was, because he lives right across the border. And so, and I'll have to say the Dutch definitely have good plating, and so. My Irish German friend Lotus can, she can say, I don't care about plating, who needs plating? I would say, well, you can eat on your plastic plate, well, you can also eat on a paper plate if you want as well. But I don't mind my blue ceramic plates, even though they're just $2, they're still decent plates. Um, and I know my Dutch friend appreciated that. Um, And I think like when it comes to the French, it's kind of mixed because I've come to realize the French are really there's a lot of different ethnic groups. There's not just like it's not just like you're French and that's it. Like there's a lot of different how do you call it? You have like the Celtic Bretons or Bretons that live in Brittany, the northwestern part of France. Um, can't lie, I did love eating off paper plates in the U.S. But yeah, paper plates are fine. But if you're saying, I'm always gonna eat on a plastic plate, and I know Lotus would say, I never said that, Jem, and I would say, well, that's almost like what you're sounding like right now. That you want everyone to eat off of a plastic plate. You don't want nice plating. You know, you don't even want paper plates. You just want that plastic plate. But no, 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 it's fine. I just like to mess with her, because she's always she's very passionate about being not only she says she's Irish, but then she's very passionate about being German too, and it's fine. But I try to temper that a little bit and say, there's more cultures out there, than just German. Um, but yeah. So like, okay, so you have the Celtic Bretons in Brittany. You also have the Normans in Normandy. You have the French Basque who live in the Basque Country in Aquitaine. Uh, I think I also have some ancestry related to them. Excuse me. You also have like southeast France, which is closer to Italy. And then you also have, I guess, the parts of France that are close to Switzerland as well. Um, so I guess just what I'm trying to say is France is definitely more than Paris. Of course, you have Paris, but of course you have the Franks, but it's more than that. Like you have so many other groups in France. It's almost like its own melting pot, really. And so that's why I've tried to understand France a bit better because I never really fully understood it until I started, getting all these matches, especially from Iron Age France and so or Gaul, and so now it's coming together a bit better. Um, but yeah, melting pot. He said the thing, yes, and really, in my mind, I think Britain is almost similar in a way because I mean, of course, you have Anglo-Saxons, but you also have like the Danish Vikings, who I think settled York or Yorkshire. I think they talk about the Danelaw, or maybe that's why my dad's partner Julie, she wasn't that big of a fan of Vikings. She's like, yeah, I'm not them. I don't have any Viking in me. Then she was related to Danish Vikings, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to be inbred. For sure, as I've said in the past, we're basically, yeah, see, that makes sense. French, German, Norse, yeah. And and so that's why, like, and I'm not saying Germany also doesn't have different ethnic groups because they do. If you go to southern Germany, I had matches again that come from the Iron Age of Germany, like I guess they call it the Hallstatt culture, Celtic culture. But they were also really related similarly to Iron Age Celts that also lived in France or Gaul. The only main difference was over there they were also related. They also mixed with the Cheruski, and I told you about Hermann Siegfried. Yeah, her royal family's German. Yeah, I also heard something about it also being Greek as well, or something. I don't. I've only heard a few things about that, but I did hear something also regarding that. Um, yeah, I yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I'd have to read more into it because I think maybe I misread it, um, but yeah, like it's interesting like how many different ethnic groups there are, and I think that's what Bjorn was saying, about knowing who your ethnic groups are, or who are you related to? Who are the people that um, are where do your roots come from? And it's taken time. It's taken time to piece it together. But I guess that's why it's important, that Celtic healer is also here, and that's always what my Uncle Herman calls me. You know, and he always says, what came before Vikings? And I said, well, before the Vikings, well, I mean, I guess technically you would have the Angles and Jutes and Saxons and Franks before the Vikings, but I guess before them you also had the Gauls or the Celts. So and but yeah, I think even as early as 125, I don't know if it was a Common Era or was it before Common Era. I have to check. No, it was Common Era. Okay. So even then, you could see in Celtic Britain, at least in England, you could still see that the Celts were already mixing with Germanic or Scandinavian tribes. Like you had the Vandals, I told you about them. I think even they were mixing with Saxons early on, which I thought was interesting. That apparently some of them already had Saxon ancestry even before the so-called invasion happened. And so, yeah, and I think my friend Ben was trying to tell me something about Old English that because he felt a connection to Old English. And I noticed that they said that Old English was connected to the Frisians, which I have ancestry to, the Frisians who lived in Netherlands. And that Old English, I know there might be some people who feel more connected to Saxons that might not like this, but it was said that the Frisians, that their language was closer to Old English than Saxon. Um, and I noticed that on average, with Frisian ancestry, that it would scale closer to modern day Welsh. So I don't know. Maybe my friend Ben has a point to that. You know, because we were talking about the Shire and the Shire, and I told him I tend to prefer Shire, and he said, well, he said something about the Shire also being connected to Old English. So um, it is something to think about. It doesn't bother me. I just see myself as English. Yeah, like I try my best to piece it together because um 'cause like I like again I know my Irish German American friend Lotus. She says she would say sometimes, you know, oh no, you're one of them. And I would say no, it's just well, definitely I feel like you and I are cousins to an extent, Mafi for sure. I just think what I'm trying to help her understand is that if you look at like, you know, history going back 1,000, 2,000 years ago, you can clearly see the connection. Um, and so that's why I try to yeah favorite I claim Welsh when it's advantageous to me. Yeah, and because like I know some people strongly identify as German, especially here. Like, you know, to them they feel like it's almost like maybe I don't know if it's like how you might identify as being English, Maffy, or maybe my dad's wife Julie, even though she also identifies as being German as well. And it's okay that they identify as that. I just try to tell them, well, you also know France and Britain and Ireland and, well, of course, Spain. They also had a history as well. And so I tried to, I guess, explain it to them as well, because maybe they're just not. You think they would be more well versed into that, like especially my Irish German friend Lotus, and but I think even Julie told me that she part of her family was from Germany. I think she said part of her family they were named last name was like Hausnecker or something, and then they had to change it to House to make it sound, I guess, more English or something. When they came to the New World. No offense, but it's like when Americans say they're Italian yet have no connection or understanding with culture. Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know how many of like I don't know if Lotus has been to Germany or um I think Julie has though. And I think my dad maybe has as well. Um but yeah, like I think at least with the Italians, at least some Italians I know, when they say they're Italian, you definitely feel it. You know, like you just it's like it's in their soul, you know. It's like you just I mean, maybe there are some Italians that that I've like there was someone I spoke to that she said she was Italian and German. Maybe I didn't feel it as strongly from her, but of course it's good to be aware of your ancestry. Yeah, and because you know a lot of times people will you know try to ask me you know who I am. They'll try to you know see you know what does he connect with, um, and so you know for me like I haven't you know, there eventually I do want to go back to Spain. Eventually I do want to go to Galicia. But I have at least been to Italy. Again, that they treated me very well over there. And I went to Rome. I went to Florence. Had a good time. Um, I've only been to London in Britain, so I don't know how much that counts. I was there for almost a week though. I know my friend Tim said, I still think, well, definitely, yeah. Well, there's a reason why Josephine said she felt like she was my auntie, and I do know a little bit about the history of Australia a little bit better. I know it wasn't always perfect. I know RPG spoke about it as a New Zealander. Um, he said that the what happened with Australia is a lot of convicts were sent there. A lot of I guess like prisoners or convicts were sent there, and so when they landed in Australia, the struggle between them and the indigenous Australians wasn't always the prettiest. But but he says like Australia is kind of like the Wild West of I guess the region they live in. Like it's kind of like he connected very much with Australian cowboys. It's almost like Australia is the Texas of how would I describe it? I guess maybe Texas for the New World for those who settled in Oceania, I guess. And so, um, yeah, and so she would say that, her and I were related, and it turns out it is right because, um, of what, yeah, that's what I want to say, but I kind of don't want to say it. Yeah. I don't want to say it because I know, like, for Josephine, it was really hard for her. Like, because she told me, why would you forgive the English? They hurt you, and maybe they also hurt her. And I told her, well, people make mistakes, and we're not always perfect. None of us are. But there are times where we can do better. And if I spoke to her again, I would also tell her about you and Roby, like how I feel like you two both have good hearts, and try to help her see a different perspective. And I know my mom also really enjoyed visiting England and London as well. So I tried to temper I tried to temper like people's perspectives. Not I try not to do it by force, of course, but I try to at least help them see a different path, help them understand just because in the past, people weren't always the prettiest with one another. Doesn't mean, can't change in the present. Um, but yeah, it's it's something that I would want her or maybe even RPG if he also has any sentiment too, because I don't know that much about the history of New Zealand. I don't know if it's similar to Australia. Um, but yeah, my argument to that is always I didn't hurt you, my parents didn't hurt you, my grandparents didn't hurt you, no one of my family is alive that hurt the people of your family who are also not alive. Yeah, so I would try to help her with that and see. I don't know much about the history of New Zealand because I don't think RPG's really spoken about it. He did speak about the islands of New Zealand and things like that. And I think he said he was raised by Irish, but he's ethnically Norwegian. So I think that's pretty cool. And and so yeah, I think I think one way I have to ask him. I don't know exactly. But and I also felt a connection to RPG as well. At first I thought he was English, and then he said, "No, I'm Irish." And then he said, "No, I'm not ethnically Irish, but I was raised by Irish, so I'm Irish." So it's great. Yeah. I don't know, like I don't know why I thought when I listened to him he sounded English, but then he's like, "No, I'm not English. I'm Irish." But then he said he was also Norwegian, so either way, it's fine. Yes, he does live in New Zealand. Yes, and I don't know if I ever went there. I don't know if I could ever be willing to meet in person, but if he would, that'd be pretty neat. I know he's probably pretty busy, but ARPG. So, could you, if it's all right, would you be able to explain the history of New Zealand? Because I don't know much about it compared to Australia. Um, I'm not as educated in Oceania history as maybe you might be. I do know a little bit about the Maori, like the indigenous people in New Zealand, but I don't know much more other than that, other than, of course, that you live there and things like that. I do know about the bird that's called a kiwi in New Zealand, and I do know about the fruit. But and of course, the Lord of the Rings films, I think, were filmed there, I think, as well, to an extent. I had a bunch of Maori doing a big song and dance, whatnot, to celebrate my 7th birthday. I was freaking terrified at hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, freaking terrified at the time. Looking back though, it was hella cool. Yeah, yeah, and again, I have watched some videos about them. Um, Probably don't know them as well as RPG, but I don't know. Maybe if I went to New Zealand, maybe I could learn more. I mean, I do know I spoke to another New Zealander that I think she felt connected more to the culture of the Maori. Um, but I don't know much about her ancestry other than that. Well, basically, Viking founded the trade, etc. here over 1,000 years ago. Spanish discovered us in like 650. Oh, okay, colonized last 1800s. Traded and a boot and blanket with smallpox for land. If you watch rugby, you will have seen them to do their song and dance. It was pretty sad beginning, but after Second World War, it's been pretty good. Here, okay. Okay, so what it sounds like, it almost sounds like the Norse who went to Greenland. Is what it sounds like to me. Um, okay, so I guess it had a bit of a different history than Australia then. It seems like, because I also don't know if what happened to Australia also happened in New Zealand. So let's see here. Maori culture is very heavily influenced by Viking art, design, weaving crafts, war chants, fearlessness. I will tell you, RPG, because you might connect with this. I remember I told you part of my ancestry is Asian, or connected to native Japanese Americans. And I had a ancestral match that was found in Nevada, of all places, and it matched, said that the native in that area, hit the way his cranium was, I guess, formed, looked very similar to the Ainu of Japan. So the Ainu Jomon, who were said to have been some of the indigenous people of Japan who might have contributed to the ancestry of the samurai. And then also even the Norse as well, which I was surprised. And so there might be some truth to that about maybe if you go back thousands of years ago, maybe the Maori and the Norse and maybe the Ainu, they all, maybe some of the natives, they all kind of had some kind of shared ancestry. Because I do know that the natives, aside from being East Asian, they're also predominantly, well, they also have some ancient North Eurasian ancestry, which is steppe ancestry. And that is highest in the Norwegians in Europe. So it could be another connection. Yeah, Japanese and Maori have a lot of different dialect and tone too, yeah. Yeah, but the ancient North Eurasian ancestry, because maybe this is why some people sometimes confuse me for, Indian, for example, because, see, I know ancient North Eurasian ancestry is found the highest in Europe in Norwegians. It's also found in Indians in India, and it's also found in the Native Americans in the New World. Um, I think the Indians, though, they also mixed with indigenous Indians too, which I think they were a little bit different. But I think the steppe ancestry is the connection because I know the natives have it, the Norwegians or the Europeans with the highest amount of it, and of course the Indians. I know a lot of the natives they don't like to be called Indians because they'll say we're not Indians, we're natives or we feel more connection to Hawaii or Japan. I think what happened is when Christopher Columbus, when he came to the New World, he thought he found India, and that's why he called the Native Americans Native American Indians. But they're not. I think the only connection they would have to India, but it would also be to Norway, is the steppe ancestry. Really, it would be the main component. Um, because the rest of their ancestry is mainly East Asian. I will say though, I will say there are some pockets. Samoan Tongan are big parts of New Zealand culture too. Samoan are mostly mixed with Chinese. Yeah, Polynesian. Yeah, I know. Maybe some Austronesian too. I will say there are some parts of Mexico. If you look at the natives down there, um, and maybe it could have influenced like the way they because in Mexico they have all these different temples that they built, the Mayans built, and you don't see that much in the U.S. and Canada. Um, but yeah, excited for specs, my guys. Oh, of course. Hello, Fanatic. Hope you're doing well tonight. Um, I did see like a match with like in part of the ad mixture I saw like a match with Chola Dynasty and that connects to like I think the indigenous people of like South India and Southeast Asia so yeah might be another factor there and also the Japanese Jomon too which would have been the indigenous people of Japan even before the Ainu because the Ainu really they are Jomon but they're also mixed with I think some Siberian ancestry too, so or Northeast Asian. So yeah, it's interesting to see the connections. And I will, dude, I'm trying to talk, slip very off an edge, like every night. Oh wow, this game gets to people, man. Yeah, I will say Bjorn, from Norway. I think because a lot of people will tell him, he's going to hell because he believes in Odin and he's a Norse from Norway. And so Bjorn says, when you talk about God, which God are you talking about? Are you talking about Odin? He also mentioned Shiva as well, which, and of course I try to tell him about Zeus too, or Zeus from Greek and Trojan folklore. I love the idea of ancient Aztec temples. So many crazy stories on YouTube. Easy get drawn down rabbit holes. Yeah. Well, the other thing too, RPG, because a lot of people don't know this. I'm okay with people in Europe not knowing Hidroceana because you guys, live across the oceans, and that's fine. But even people here, like in the U.S., they don't. They think a lot of the Mexicans are predominantly Spaniards or mainly of European Spanish ancestry from Spain. But the reality is that a lot of the Mexicans are really predominantly Native Americans or predominantly Native people. And so I think it's important to let them know that because I think like some people here think that they think that Spanish came from Mexico. But of course there's some people here too that think English came from America or the U.S. So I don't know how many people in New Zealand think similarly, but um, yeah, it's just food for thought. Oh yeah, by the way, RPG, just quick tangent. I want to let you know Mystic Mime has given me an extra incentive to eventually also do Family Crest quests because I bought 5,000 Chaos Runes from him for a special deal of 80 GP each, which I thought was a really good deal. I thought 95 was also already really good, but he messaged me again and he said, "Hey, I still got these runes. If you want them, I'll give you a good deal for them." So, or even a better deal. Ever watched a movie by Mel Gibson, Apocalypto? Was Aztec Mind film? I watched a little bit of it. You know, see the thing with the Mexicans, especially the ones because I know a lot of people who live in the U.S. here that are like mainly Native American, really. Like they're not really. And I'm not trying to say that in a mean or a bad way, but I think a lot of people they say, "Oh, hey, Mexican, I'm talking to a Spaniard." I'm like, "No, you're." It's like if you went to New Zealand and you said, "Hey, I'm talking to a British English guy," and they're like, "No, he's Maori or she's Maori." You can be both, of course. You can be both, and that's all right too. But I just try to help them. I try to educate them a little bit better, um, just so they can understand the difference. um, and so, where was I going with this? Okay, so a lot of times when I talk to a lot of the natives that are Native American Mexicans, they always ask me, why do you feel a connection to Asia? Why is Asia, did you have an ancestor that was part Asian? And so I've come to understand, because like, see, when I looked at the maternal ancestry of my dad, he had a deep dive match from Montana from 12,000 years ago. And the man looked very similar to my medieval Japanese Scottish friend Jess. So Jess comes from a Pacific Northwest tribe in British Columbia, and I think she comes from the Tsimshian Nation. I don't know if you know much about the Alaskan at the Baskins or at the Paskins or the natives that live in the Pacific Northwest, especially in British Columbia. But yeah, so you have the Tlingits, you have the Tsimshian, and these were almost they were very similar in some ways to like the Samurai, or also like to the Ainu as well. Just a lot of they have a lot of you can see a lot of shared parallels in their history, in their culture, and the way they do their clothing. And the man, the sample from Montana from 12,000 years ago that my dad got looked just like Jess, looked just like her. And she would always say she was medieval Japanese, which I'm thinking is like, probably the time of the Ainu, and before Japan became mainly, what is now seen as modern Japan. Is there were different groups that were going through Japan, especially the last 2,500 years, and so because you had the Yayoi who were Northeast Asians, you had the Kolfin who were more East Asian. Norse and Norwegian, Scandinavian, complete separate timeline, timelessness and bloodlines. I was grilled by a Norwegian artist because I said I was Norse by blood but raised in New Zealand. I'll never say I'm Norse again. It's the way of the old. Yeah, I guess it all kind of depends because I know Bjorn also. Um, that's happened to him as well. That well, it's different for Bjorn. What happens with Bjorn is they'll say you're not Norse because you're not blonde, which I think is kind of stupid because First off, have they ever heard of Eric the Red? Who went to Greenland. He wasn't blonde; he had red hair. Nothing wrong with having blonde hair, but that's their argument. They also say, uh, you know, why are you pretending to be a Viking instead of, fighting the immigrants, which I also think is another weird argument as well. And then they would say, you're not a Viking buddy, and he hates the word buddy, because it's usually derogatory, you know, or they'll say you're you're going to hell for believing in Odin, so and and the thing is, like, it's very I know it's very important to him, his Norse roots. Like I know that's, he was born in Norway. I mean, he's not 100. He's not only Norse. I mean, well, thankfully not inbred, but he's mainly Norse, but he also has some Celtic, and I think he said he had 0.5% of indigenous Amazonian from the Americas. Um, but yeah, like, he always does videos about Viking life and how people lived back then. And he also has made a video about making a Viking or Norse longbow, which I thought was pretty cool. And so you might find it interesting in his channel. I had no idea. I was just interested to learn. I was chewed out for asking Norse are over 2,000 years old. Well, yeah. I mean, well, see, Bjorn talks more about the Norse from the Viking Age, which to me it's not so long ago because I talk about, the age of heroes, like the Mycenaean Greeks and the Trojans, and that's like 3,500 years ago. That's well before the Viking Age. That's like thousands of years ago before the Vikings. And also the Celts, during the Iron Age. So, and so the thing about it is that, um, because I've learned a lot about the natives and how they still, some of them still, feel strongly connected to their cultures. And I feel like it's the same for Bjorn, how he still feels very strongly about his Norse roots. Yeah, I love it too. Well, no, never know 100% everything that happened, but super interesting. Yeah. Um, See, Bjorn also looks a lot like my dad's father, Siggy. Because see, my dad is named Siggy, or well, Sigifredo in Spanish, but most people call him Siggy because it comes from Sigurd, which is from Norse folklore. And so there's my dad's Siggy, and then his dad was named Siggy. I'm not named Siggy though. I'm named Louis or Louis. A lot of people call me Louis, or some people call me Luigi. But anyways, for those who don't know about the story of the Volsunga Saga, because I know some people don't, Sigurd was a warrior who was said to have fought the dragon Fafnir. I think in Norwegian they say it a bit different, but yeah. New Zealand, the Maori stories are very similar to Greek and Norse. Yeah. And I know Bjorn even did a whole video on that too. Um, But I think there were some people, and it's not usually from New Zealanders, by the way. It's usually people, unfortunately, from the country I was born and raised in the U.S. But a lot of people will say they'll tell him you're going to hell for believing in Odin, and then he'll say, "You fucking idiots." Well, he says it a bit differently, but I this is how I say it. You fucking idiots. You don't realize, how Old Norse influenced English. You know? Because about Tuesday comes from Tyr's Day, Wednesday comes from Odin's Day. I prefer saying Odin than Woden, but to each their own. Thursday is Thor's Day, and then Friday is Freya's Day. Maybe you also know that too, RPG. But I think what he was trying to say is when people were saying, you're going to hell for believing in Odin, he would say, well, you guys don't understand how Old Norse influenced English, the English language. And of course, the same can be said too for Latin, Greek, and also Proto-Celtic. Do you think of the words philosophy, which would come from the Greek philosophia? Family comes from familia, which I think is Latin. Could be Latin or Greek. I'll have to check on that. But it's like if people say, and I don't see it that much. I haven't really heard it much from people from the Britain yet, but at least here in the U.S., people they get very uppity when people mention other languages, like whether it's Spanish or Norwegian, and you just have to tell them that English itself was influenced by other languages, you know. Um, but then these are the same people that some of them think that English came from the U.S. and maybe they thought the in my mind I'm thinking that maybe some of them think the British were speaking in some other language or something. I don't know. It's really weird, right? But yeah, I don't know how many people he gets watching his videos from New Zealand. I'm sure he probably gets some, but yeah. He actually did go to Spain, by the way, recently, which I was actually kind of happy about. It's always good to see good representation there. Um, just had a good time, and because he's published his book in multiple languages, one of them also being Spanish. So, um, if you have a look at native Maori carving, woodwork, weaponry, it's very Norse inspired. What I'm thinking, RPGs, there's probably a shared ancestry that goes back thousands of years. That's the only thing I can think of. That somehow, maybe, in the distant past, there's a time where the Norse, the Maori, maybe even the Ainu of Japan, the Jomon Ainu, that they all had this shared ancestry going back thousands of years ago, at least some kind of shared ancestry. Um, yeah, and I think my uncle Herman, my uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman says it best that a lot of people only see what they see today, or they only see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see, what it took to get to this point. And the easiest way I can explain it is, well, look at Cheddar Man. I don't know if you know much about Cheddarman RPG, but he lived in England 9,000 years ago in Cheddar Gorge, and he had blue eyes, but he had dark skin. And that's how some of the people in England looked 9,000 years ago. Some people are still related to Cheddarman to this day. I think even my dad's partner, Julie, was related to Cheddarman. And she said, you can't take the cheddar out of me, which is fine. I think it's cool. Um, but yeah, let me check here. Give me a sec. I think that Cheddarman was also genetically most similar to modern day Swedish, so I also found that interesting too. Um, Here, let me check. In trading, wait, hold on, I gotta read. They all have the same stories and gods because they originated from the same area. Okay. In trading for over thousands of years was a boat in Norway, somewhere that had been repaired by native New Zealand trees. Okay. Story. Okay, so what I can tell you, RPG, because I tried to go through the ancestry. I tried to uh, make it make sense through that angle. Um, I did notice that some people in Peru, because I don't know if you know much about Peru, but it is a country in the Americas, specifically South America. There were natives there that were have said to have red hair, actually. And I noticed some of the admixture from Peru that I had uh, sample, some ancestral matches. Not deep dive, like I didn't share chromosomes, but at least genetic distance. It seemed like some of the natives had mixed with the some Finno-Uric people. So I don't know if you know much about like the Udmurts, the Udmurt people from they're like a Finno-Uric people that live in what is nowadays modern day Russia, but I think they also were lived around the Ural Mountains, which I think it's the mountain range that I think separates Europe and I think more specifically East Asia. And so, because Because I think they say that the people with the most amount of red hair is actually not found in Ireland or Scotland. It's found in the Udmurts, and I think they call it the Republic of Udmurtia. But yeah, it makes sense now that the why some Peruvians had red hair, because some way somehow they had mixed with these Finno-Ugric people that somehow found a way to get to the New World. Either they took a boat, or they crossed, or they somehow crossed the northern expanse, from Siberia to Alaska. But there was a way that they got there somehow. Um, okay, the Russian Viking. No, I don't think it was anything with Vikings. It was Finno-Ugric. So Finno-Ugric people are said to have come from Siberians. Or they would have been the Siberians after the Paleo-Siberians. They would have been more related to the modern day East Asians, really. Their paternal lineage, mainly. Um, and so, and I think they're the Finno-Ugric people. You can also find ancestry related to them in Finland, more specifically. I don't know if you know much about the Finnish and their ancestry, but yeah. So not I don't think related to Norse, but more so so the guy there, more so related to the Finno-Ugric people, really closer to modern day Siberians. Let's see. But yeah, so they were related to them, and they were related also to the Canti-Mansi. That's another Finno-Ugric. I think sometimes they also use the word semiotic. I think that might be also kind of connected to the Sami, at least their paternal lineage, if you know much about the Sami from Scandinavia. Um, Giants 100% exist in some sense. Oh, okay. So they have talked about the Patagonian giants. I don't know if you know much about Patagonia. So Patagonia can encompass Chile and Argentina. And it was said that some of the natives, because it seems like I might also have some native Japanese ancestry, native Japanese American ancestry connected to that area. That some of the natives down there were taller than Europeans at the time. That some of them were over 6 foot, maybe even 7 feet. And but if you look at their maternal lineage, it goes back to Japan or Northeast Asia before the Ice Age, and that'd go back to the Jomon period. Um, and it seems that the Jomon and the Yayoi and the Kolfin, the modern day East Asians, that they all shared a similar maternal lineage, if you in the form of the maternal haplogroup D, which is found most highly in East Asians, specifically the Japanese. Um, so, um, and I think the Tlingits of the Pacific Northwest of British Columbia, they call him Shukaka, which means man ahead of us. Because there were natives before natives. There were different. The natives that we know today. They all came during different times, and that's just the nature of migration, really. But yeah, no, it's interesting to learn about that. Um, let's see. I don't know if you're still here, Matthew, by the way, or if you went to sleep. But if you're still here, I hope you're enjoying the conversation. Let's see. Let's see here. No worries. Okay. Yeah, so I think part of what you're saying, RPG, I can sort of relate to because if you look at the natives, for example, the natives going all the way from Alaska, and yes, also Greenland, because there were people there before the Inuit. I know the the Greenlanders or the Inuit will say we're Inuit, but I will say there were people before Inuit, and also Eskimo can also mean those who tie snowshoes, not only those who will eat raw meat. But anyways, so there's a wide range of how the natives can look like. There's well, of course, you don't want to be inbred. There's a wide range of how tall they can be. Some natives. No worries, it's fine. I tried to explain it as best as I can, Maffy. I try to bring it down to earth so it makes more sense. To those who struggle a bit more. So there are some natives, like in Guatemala, for example. Guatemala, it's a country in what most view as Central America, but it's really also part of North America too. There are some people there that are under 5 feet. And then you have, I told you about some of the Patagonians that are, some were said to have been over 6 feet, or even taller than that. I think that includes some natives also in the plains as well. In the plains, like the Dakotas, South Dakota, North Dakota, I think that area of the U.S. And so, as I was talking to Uncle Herman about, some of the natives, like in Peru, say that there should be like a center for the natives to come together. And Uncle Herman says, well, the natives were never really together, because some of the natives will try to say that this land was a paradise before Europeans came, but she also thinks that the English were the first to also find this place too before Columbus apparently as well. That they went to Plymouth Rock and yeah, they were the first. No. Not trying to downplay it, but I'm just saying there were other people who came here too. And I tell her, say this was a utopia, but I don't think you know about the, you only have to look at what happened with the Aztecs and the Mayans, to know that it wasn't kumbaya. It wasn't always pretty. Off topic, but movie in Japan with Keanu Reeves called 47 Ronin. Really cool mythical story. Yeah. Yeah, like, I'm gonna try to see how I can explain it. It's just like a very long history, and I think, but it is good to talk about. It's good to share, and I think maybe that's why Uncle Herman, he calls me Celtic Healer, because he always says, what came before the Vikings, and you might relate with this RPG. I would say, well, before the Vikings, well, it would have been Norse, of course, because, Viking can also, Bjorn says, the Norse, went Viking, and I think that's why they were called Vikings. But before that, you had of course, the Anglo-Saxons, the Jutes, the Franks, maybe even, Lombards or Lombards as well, the Vandals, I guess the Macromani, and then before them you had the Celts, the Iron Age Celts, or the Gauls. And so I try to cover the Gauls a bit more because, well, I'm genetically closest to them, to the Iron Age Celts, at least that lived in Gaul, which would include modern-day France, parts of Spain and Portugal, Switzerland, southern Germany, northern Italy, and it would even extend to Britain and Ireland. Heard about a theory behind the name Viking, Six Kings, Roman numeral, I don't know how true or what. So, see, I don't know about the interaction as much between Romans and Vikings. I know more about like Romans and like Germanic tribes like the Cherusci. I don't know if you ever heard of Hermann Siegfried. He might have descended from Norse originally, but he was a Germanic chieftain that lived in Germany, and he fought at the Battle of Teutoburg. Found it quite curious topic personally. I don't know. I look at the Y DNA of the Norsemen because they have DNA connected to I1. And if you look at that I1 lineage, you can also see it in Gallo Celts too, but they have I2. So it was said that I1 separated from I2 a few thousand years ago. That they were one Y DNA paternal lineage, but then I1 separated from I2. And it was said that I2 can be found Gallo Celts. It can be found in people in the Balkans. It can be found in Thracians or Draichi. Almost sounds like Draig in Welsh, for those who know, the word for dragon. And so maybe the Norse could have a connection to Thracians. I don't know if you know much about the Thracians or about the region of Thrace. That goes back to ancient Greece and Troy, though. And so Captain James Smith, when he first sailed to America, said this about the natives. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, by the way, Taki, if you feel comfortable sharing, do you live in the US or do you live in Canada or do you live across the ocean? Just kind of want to gauge. Oh, Texas, okay. Hope you're doing okay, by the way. I heard there was a lot of floods down there. Hope you're doing all right. Yeah, I saw a video of a house that kind of broke apart and went into the moving waters. Yeah. No, I'm glad you're doing all right. Yeah, because I know that might have been tough for a lot of people over there. I live in the Pacific Northwest, by the way. I live in the kind of or I live in North Idaho, Washington, Eastern Washington area. Um, but yeah, no, like I think I'm gonna try to see how I can explain it. Um, let's see. Yeah, so I mentioned about the Thracians. I mentioned about the word dragon, Thraig, in Welsh. And so, in my mind, the way I look at it, because you also look at Mesolithic Sweden and might also connect to Norway and Denmark, that originally the paternal ancestors there were of I2 lineage. So it shows that clearly that lineage was there originally. But let's see. I hiked around the Oregon-Washington border a few years back. Oh, nice. Hope you had a good time. Yeah, I really enjoy this area. It's nice to see the woods and the mountains and the forest and again I think I told you guys my dad he had a match from Montana 12,000 years ago. That's not too far away from this area. That again looked very similar to my medieval Japanese Scottish friend Jess. Let me see here. But yeah, um yeah, no, I think what was I gonna try to say? Yeah, history definitely can be very intertwined, and that's why it's so important to look at the history before the medieval ages and see, where people were before then. Where did people live? Or who were the groups that lived there? Around 500 before Common Era, 1,000 before, or even 1,500 before. Going back to the Bronze Age, really. Um, let's see. By the way, RPG, have you visited the US before, or any parts of the Americas, or would you ever like to visit? If you don't want to at the moment, I can understand because I know the politics here have been been heated in the last few months, but just curious if you ever would be interested in visiting. Oh, you've never traveled out of New Zealand? Oh, wow. Would you ever like to, or would you ever? You know, if not, then I could understand. But I know people here have never traveled out of their town even. So, but I do think, you know, traveling is good from time to time to be exposed, you know, to the world also physically if you can as well. Yes, RPG wants to come to California. Love to one day, would have to deal with my little family, of course. Makes sense. So here. Yeah, by the way, RPG, I think you and my friend Ben uh, would have quite the interesting conversation. My friend Ben, by the way, he's a Welsh American. His mum emigrated from Wales, but she was born there. My friend Ben, he always, I've got a good buddy we played with on PlayStation for years in Cali. 100% have to go there. Yeah, so my friend Ben, he's a Welsh American, but he has an interest. He talks a lot about the Roman Empire. And so when he mentions the Vikings, or the Cheruski, by the way, RPG, he tends to have a bit more of a sour opinion. So it'd be interesting to see how you two would interact because he's kind of the mind that the Norsemen or the Vikings, when they came to Britain, it wasn't so pretty, and he's not wrong, but I also try to temper his perspective as well. Um, yeah, we'll love it, RPG. Yeah, I try to help him understand that, while Rome, was a powerful civilization, and there was some good that it also contributed. It's also important not to also forget what came before Rome and what can come after as well. I try to mention him about democracy that originated from the Greeks and the Trojans, and so I try to remind him of that as well. Not sure about the heat. I'm a tropical Viking. It's funny. Um, but yeah, no, you know, it's kind of something to think about. But yeah, Ben, yeah, we'll have to have a chat with him sometime. Yeah, Ben is one of my best friends. He sometimes I see him as like the most challenging of quote unquote adversaries. I guess that's how some people in the Senate would have been when they were debating. But also one of the closest of friends. His hospitality is second to none. When he invited me to his home, I could feel it. I could feel the hospitality he shared. And yeah, he always just a good friend. Noct, you have a little bro seeking assistance. Uh, that's what makes good friends. They're not afraid to challenge ideas. Yeah, so like I think because I know someone also from Wales who calls herself sometimes Octavia, and I think Octavia also comes from Latin as well, and that might also go back to the Romans. Because see, I think I never really thought about it, but I know that Wales in particular has uh, has a lot of history regarding the Romans. When they this was before the Anglo-Saxons and all that they had invaded Britain when the Celts were mainly there. And I'm sure some of the Welsh or the Welsh that we know of today mixed with the Romans that were there. And so maybe that's why my friend Ben thinks like that. Rio Ali, if they are still here. What's up, Rio Ali? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I hold on. Let me check. Are you still here? Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Rao Ali, I think. Sometimes I can get deep into my own sharings. They may have dipped. Oh, sorry to hear that. Yeah, maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll come back. But but yeah. So um, let's see. I can explain this. Give me a sec. Yeah. So like with my friend Ben, I just try to temper sometimes the way he thinks. Like even like one time he said like for drug addicts that people the U.S. government should ban some of the harmful drugs that are keeping some people on the streets that they feel like they can't get any help. And when I said, you know, and then when he told me, aren't you going to help, that person? If not, then that makes you look selfish. And I told him, well, sometimes Ben, people have to also help themselves, or they sometimes have to go on their own path of self-healing. Uh, their band that doesn't fix it. Oh wow. Um, yeah, so I told him that we can't always dictate people's lives because if you do that, then you kind of take away their democratic choice or their choice to seek a different path for themselves. And yeah, yeah, I don't know what happened to Rao. Um, you're saying they're banned. I don't know what happened, but yeah, no, I think if I can ever get back to him again, I hope he's doing all right. But if I can ever get back to him, I'll mention the RPG. He banned me once. I, well, if it was me, Maffy, I don't think I've ever done that before. At least I don't remember. Let's see here. You can only help people so much, bro. Yeah, that's what I would tell him. That's what I would tell him. Ben, he reminds me a lot of one of the main characters from Final Fantasy XIV. He's also one of the main antagonists. His name is Emmett Selk, or also Hades. I don't know. I think you mentioned, you have some knowledge of Greek mythology, so I'm sure you know who Hades is. And I could see a lot of parallels between my friend Ben and Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. And so, excuse me. Um, because I also remember him saying too, like when the Cherusci had fought 3 Roman legions at the Battle of Teutoburg in Germany, he said, it was a great tragedy that Caesar lost those 3 legions that day. And then all I told him is, well, it might not have been such a good idea to invade that area. And so yeah, because I'm also related to the Cherusci, or actually my dad got a deep dive match with them, so Now they're more so related to the modern day French and South Dutch because I know Germany also had a lot of different migrations too. Like they had the Huns, they had I don't know if the Avars influenced them too, and maybe even the Mongols or Mongolians. I don't know. So, but yeah, it's interesting to learn about that. Oh yeah, and the Slavic people too, or Skaloveni. So, but oops, my bad. And then of course, I also would remind him too that democracy originally didn't come from Rome; it came from Greece. And that's another important factor to remember too, because I know some people like to talk about Rome or the glory of Rome, but really Rome wouldn't have been what it was without Greece that came before, without democracy. And that's really the participation of everyone, all of us. And you can only help someone who's willing to be helped. Yeah, exactly. And that's what democracy is. Democracy is having that choice, having that freedom to choose your path. Because if we didn't have a democracy, it'd be closer to a dictatorship, and you guys all probably know how that ends up. And even right now here in the U.S., it's a bit contentious, but we have to remember when people say, this is not a democracy, it's a republic. We have to understand, well, you can also have a democratic republic, or a republic alone can't function at full capacity, also without the consent of the citizens. That comes from democracy. So it's important to temper that kind of thinking, because, at least in my opinion, because I know there's some people that love to harp all day about Rome, and I tell them, well, don't forget Greece now. Don't forget Troy. Don't forget the age of heroes. Those who came before and those who will come after. And I know even Bjorn mentions too that, in his opinion, he believes there was a form of democracy in Norway, or Norway too. There might have been, but I also try to remind him of Greece as well, and Troy, to remind him not only of Northern Europe but also Southern Europe too. Just a bit of a balance there. I also knew someone too that not only Ben, but I knew someone. It's my mom's. My mom has a partner named Scott, and he has a son named Adam. And so Adam, he also would always talk a lot about Rome as well. Um, his favorite line was "Let the games begin." Like I don't know if you've seen those scenes, like of some of the Romans, eating grapes, when they were watching the gladiators fight each other. Not a pleasant sight to see, especially if you're in the receiving end of that on the Colosseum. But he always had this idea that he was somehow better. Like he would he would always try to, get with me about like if he beat me at chess, he would say, "Well, I'm better than you now." But then when I would beat him in Smash Bros, he couldn't take that, and he would pause the game every time I was about to beat him. He says, "Yeah, you didn't beat me," and I was like, "Well, if you didn't pause the game, you would have lost there." And but he is a little bit different than Ben. Ben, I feel like at least with Ben there was a little bit more sense I could talk into him, but with Adam, he was more so my way or the highway. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, and so he just You know, he had been to Italy, he had been to Rome. I don't know his ancestry aside. I know my mom calls his dad a typical German. Not trying to insult him, but see, my mom sometimes reminds me of someone, even though she's has Spanish ancestry, she reminds me of someone who's like closer to French or English. She reminds me, I guess, closer to Maffy maybe, and so that's against the rules of my friend group. Yeah, and so, yeah, so he would get mad when I would beat him in Smash Bros. He'd get mad even when I would beat him in chess. Like he couldn't take it if I would beat him in chess. Um, he just he just couldn't understand the concept of not always being right. I think in his head he always thought he was the smartest apparently or something. I don't know. Different than Ben for sure. But because I think if you see if Ben, him and I were all in an intellectual debate, at least with Ben he'd be fine with his opinion being challenged. But with him, he just he would probably say, you know, I'm right, you two are wrong, no matter what. You know? But now I know they say bulls are stubborn, and I am a Taurus, by the way. My friend Ben's a Capricorn. Adam's a Taurus. But even though I'm a Taurus, I can still accept if someone has a different opinion. Like my friend Ben has a different opinion, I have a different opinion. That's fine. We should be allowed to have different opinions, you know? Oh, nice. 250K from 84 fishing. Nice. Um, but I think with Adam, you know, he struggles more with different opinions. I think he thinks his opinion's the only opinion, which you know, you can see how where that went to. Yeah, almost got 10K raw shark, slowly getting there. Oh, nice. That's pretty cool. Um, but yeah, let's see here. Let's see. But I'm trying to think of someone else. That was another another more positive influence. Check here. If I can cook them, would be over 2 million cooking XP. Oh, nice, 50's free cooking. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Who would have been another close friend of mine? Oh yeah, I had another good friend. His name was Reed. So Reed and I, we went to school together too, and I think he said he was Irish and German. And what I liked about Reed is that, you know, he's currently he's been in the army for a few years, and I think he was even stationed in Germany. But what I liked about Reed is I felt like he had a good heart deep down, and you know, I went to like a Pokemon tournament together when we were both still in school. Yeah, that was when I was still in Florida. We went to a tournament in Orlando. It was really fun. And I remember one day, you know, one time when we were coming back, he just told me that he felt like I was his closest friend, and you know, it meant a lot to him, and it also meant a lot to me as well. So it's yeah, he was a good guy, and I'm glad he's still doing okay. You know, so that's a cool, good memory to have going to Pokemon convention. Yeah, no, it was really fun, and you know, I was watching a video about Bjorn. He was talking a lot about AI, you know, about artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And I tried to ask him, or I tried to say, you know, in my mind, when I think of artificial intelligence, I think of Japan, because I feel like that, um, you know, a lot of technological advancements were not only made in ooh, 63 Magic, were not only made in Europe, but were also made in East Asia, like Japan, and I guess even to an extent Korea and China. Because when I watch videos about Japan, I've come to understand how, especially modern Japan, how technologically advanced they've become. I went to a Big Hammer Lord of the Rings convention, huge tabletops built with both sides of the field. For my buddy's birthday years ago. Always remember that day. It was cool. Glad to hear RPG. I also know some people who enjoy Warhammer as well. Um, but yeah, no, like I think a lot of the Japanese when I think of technology, because I know um, it's become a very integral part of their society. But then I also think about the way they view ancestry. I think that over time they've become more open of foreigners or gaijin, coming to Japan and of course mixing with the Japanese. And of course that's also I think helped their birth rates too, because I know their birth rates haven't been the best for a number of years. Um, I've never got into them, but if I won a lotto one day, I've definitely got a lot of stuff I can waste it on. That's pretty cool. Um, uh, have you ever wanted to visit Japan, by the way, RPG? I know it's probably not too far away from your region, because I know you live in New Zealand, in Oceania. Never been outside the North Island. Not even been South Island before. Oh wow. Oh, so you still got New Zealand to even visit, other parts of New Zealand to visit. I guess it's kind of like the Japanese who sometimes feel like that, they don't feel like a need to go to other parts of the world. They can just visit other parts of Japan. Japan would be definitely my top five. Yeah, I don't know. I just like in the back of my mind, even when I think of like sometimes like some of the Germans or at least present day Germans, and they feel a connection to Japan themselves. I just think it comes from like medieval East Asian ancestry, like the Huns, uh, maybe even Avars. We had the Turks and the Mongols. There was probably something that came over that started building that connection. Um, because you know, of course, also native Japanese Americans and all that too. And but yeah, no, I always think to myself that you know that the source of uh, well, not the source of technology, but when I was playing Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail, a little bit of a tangent, but they explored the expansion, the New World, which is the Americas, and it's interesting how they went from the Americas straight to like Neo Tokyo, and it kind of felt jarring to me at first because it was like, okay, you're exploring all these native cultures in the Americas, then you go straight to Neo Tokyo, which is like a futuristic Japan. And I almost felt like the Japanese themselves were it's almost like they had this longing that they were trying to write in that story. Um, um, I got, I view it as part of it was like Paris syndrome. I don't know if you ever heard of that. But it's like how some of the Japanese they have this thing about viewing Paris as this kind of wonderland of sorts for whatever reason. I don't know why specifically Paris, but it's interesting. Um, and I think what it is with them is that they haven't. well, I mean, of course they've mixed with different people throughout the ages. You know, like you had the Jomon, you had the Yo-Yo, you had the Kolfin. Um, you still have a green cape. Um, yeah, well, I have my Gothic cape. I don't know if I still have like a regular green cape. I'll have to check on that. Um, but yeah, let me check. Um, 60. Yeah, I'm actually 63 magic. Didn't you see it? I got 63 magic. Yeah. Um, yeah. So where was I going with this? See, my bad is yeah, it is Gothics. Yeah. Um, so yeah, like I think with them, I think from my perspective, because you know I'm technically also part Japanese because of my Asian ancestry. I would say if they can learn to uh, be more open with other people, that could help them. Sorry, dude, hard to see on my phone. Oh, no worries, it's fine. Um, yeah, I just think for a long time they've kind of been sort of isolated, and I guess even the natives to some extent too have kind of been like that. So, I can kind of see parallels there. But I do remember when I went to Japan, they treated me very well. I know some people, you know, they don't want to go to Japan because, you know, they don't want to be they're afraid of being branded negatively as a gaijin or foreigner. But when I went there, I spoke broken Japanese, but they liked my company. They liked spending time around me, and even a family in a Tokyo sushi bar invited me to eat with them. And so that was nice to see. And so I tried to understand them better that way. I tried to understand, you know, who they really are, you know, and what their, you know, full history is, you know. I kind of view like Japan, Korea, and China, they're almost like the Greece of the East, you know, like how we have Greece in the West. One of my first girlfriends was were I think what yeah was Japanese, yeah. Um, don't worry, I also mistype sometimes too. Unless if it's just like uh, or it's like kind of like my Uncle Herman says it don't work like that, yeah. That's pretty cool. Hopefully you two got along, by the way, at least somewhat, you know, while you were with her. I know the Japanese are tend to be described as very shy, or they tend to be very, you know, honestly, after I've seen some of the natives, I think some of the natives are even more shy than the Japanese, to be honest. But I can see why some of the Japanese can be viewed as shy too. Let me see here. Let's see. She was on exchange group for the year at college. They were not allowed to have relationships, so it was super hard to meet IRL. Yeah, I've heard about that. That in Japan, especially, um, somehow the girls and boys are not allowed to date until after high school, which I think is a bit weird, but to each their own, I guess. Yeah, I think when I kind of when I look at them sometimes I think to myself that I'm gonna try to see if I can describe it. I think, you know, when I think of like their arts and the anime and manga that comes from Japan, I think that's just one way of how they can express themselves, you know, of how they can express their thoughts, the way they think, the way they view the world. Because I guess maybe they struggle doing that publicly, you know. Maybe it's easier for them to do it through other mediums. And Now, have you even tried to understand some of the Asian Americans that live here too, like the Vietnamese and things like that? Had a Cambodian friend, same sort of deal. They weren't allowed boyfriends because their parents had rage. It sounds a lot like India, now that I think about it, because I think India they do the same thing too. I'm not sure if it's if it's mainly like a South Asian, Southeast Asian, East Asian kind of culture or Eastern culture really. Um, I also know in Japan too, it's a shame that a lot of the Japanese kind of look down at beards because the beards were one of the defining factors of the samurai. Like if you've ever seen photos of Miyamoto Musashi. And I'm not sure if that view on beards came more from Korea over time, or China, or wherever. Because I know in Korea especially they're also not big into beards. But if you look at the warriors of the like during the time of Miyamoto Musashi, that would have been before the Edo period, um, probably around maybe 1500s or even before then. Um, he grew a beard. He grew a beard and also had long hair. And I sometimes think about the Japanese men. I know some of them are starting to grow their hair and beards. Um, I've actually been doing that myself, more so my hair than my beard, because I had a beard for a long time. I still do, but I've also been growing my hair because I feel like it kind of balances the beard. Not sure, but Viking were huge on having clean beards and grooming. Yeah. No, I think it's something to take into account because I've watched a lot of videos of Japan, and so they do videos where apparently when it comes to intermarriages with other groups, it seems like the women tend to marry out more than the men. It seems like the men, for whatever reason, don't date foreigners as much as the women do, um, which is interesting, how that kind of works. Um, and Shaved my hair off last year was just annoying after so many years. So I like to keep my beard whenever I can. Yeah, I think for me, I think the reason why I've been growing my hair is because I notice if I only have the beard, it works for some people some people can be bald and still look good with a beard. But with me, if I only have my beard, it starts to look a little bit too heavy. Mrs. and Mini RPG don't like it so much. It's like wire. Oh yeah, that's how it is kind of like for me as well. It can be a little bit coarse for sure. And yeah, so I've I feel like growing my hair kind of helps balance the beard. It just kind of it just balances it. But yeah, I know in Japan and Korea, some people even use like laser technology to like shave their beard. Not only, well, of course, women have their own ways of doing things, but even the men also sometimes do that, and have to use head shavers to shave my beard. Razors just been not quite, but they blunt each shave. Yeah, it can also get bloody too if you're not careful. That's happened to me before, where I didn't put adequate shaving cream and ugh, it hurt. I think that's why I've kind of just been letting my beard grow, but also letting my hair grow because I think, excuse me, that my hair will eventually get long enough to where it kind of balances the beard a little bit better. I think it also looks better personally. I know some people prefer the bald and beard look, but I'm not one of those people. Um, but hey, for people who can rock that look and like it, hey, not a bad thing, I guess. But yeah, I'm glad some of the Japanese men are starting to reconnect with their samurai roots because even if you've seen the film Seven Samurai, a lot of the samurai did have beards and did grow their hair. So my beard's just so coarse. Head shaver is only course of action or sheep shears. Yeah, mine is too. Yeah, sometimes when I look at Bjorn's beard, it reminds me of my own, so I can feel that. Um, but yeah, like I know it's interesting to talk about because I know like I'm not technically 100% Japanese and I'm born and raised in Japan, but it is still technically also part of my ancestry, along with my European ancestry and Celtic healer and maybe even some Egyptian, ancient Egyptian and indigenous North African. And so it's interesting to kind of see how it all connects. And I know a lot of, for example, Asian Americans I've spoken to, like Vietnamese and Chinese, they'll say, I don't want to hear you being 3% Asian. And when I tell them, I might be 3% ancient Egyptian, they're like, oh no, it's kind of funny. You'll love 47 Ronin film, I think, very mythological, not realistic. Yeah. I think the Asians, what I've noticed, I've even noticed it partly in my dad's side of the family, because my mom's side is mainly European, is, I feel like there's always this kind of, I don't know why they tend to kind of look down on themselves a lot, I've noticed. Like, they tend to be kind of self-deprecating. And I try to remind them good things about their culture. Well, at least, for example, the Chinese and Vietnamese and Japanese I've spoken to. I tell them, well, without Japan, there'd be no manga, there'd be no Pokemon, there'd be no Yu-Gi-Oh, there'd be none of that. Actually, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh, my Uncle Herman thought he was Mexican, which I thought was funny, like a Native American Mexican. And so the thing is, because I saw this in some of the matches in Mexico or Mexico, that some of them do have admixture related to indigenous Japanese Jomon. And so if the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! Kazuki Takahashi is more Jomon than Yayoi Kofun, which is closer to modern day Japanese, it makes sense, why he'd resemble them. Ronin or Samurai without Masters, always. Yeah, there is one anime I love watching. I don't know if you watched it, Rurouni Kenshin. Um, they recently released a remake for the series, and I've quite enjoyed it. Um, and I think that's what my friend Jess says when she's medieval Japanese is kind of relating more to that era, before the some of the Japanese became more and I call it yes, what is it? Yes sir, no sir, whatever. They basically, whatever what my Uncle Herman would say, whatever the rule of law is, kind of goes, before they kind of started thinking more like that. They were more like warriors, really. Not saying they're not warriors now, but a samurai era, 1900s, yeah. Yeah, and I think some of them are starting to reclaim their roots. Like I think, I see some Japanese now growing their hair, growing their beards. It's a good thing in my opinion. It's good that they're starting to not just want to fit the mold anymore or or fit what they think the mold is, Which, kudos to them. They should do that. It's part of their heritage. But yeah, I do notice like I feel like the way that we talk, like you and I RPG and of course Nate and Maffy and everyone else, Taki, I feel like, you guys and I can have more of a direct conversation. But what I notice with some of the Asians is it's a little bit harder to do that. I think my dad's family is all right, but um But I notice with them sometimes it's like they'll be willing to talk to you, but it has to be like through it almost makes me think of those like glass what do you call them? The glass it's like a glass I think like sometimes when you go to like certain build office buildings, they have like a glass separating you and the other person. And it's almost like a barrier. Like they have like this barrier that they'll talk to you, but they won't talk to you. Or like, well, they'll talk to you, but they won't. But once you get into like deep conversations, like you guys and I have, it's like they start to retreat for whatever reason. I don't know why. But hopefully in time things change. I love seeing the videos with all the um, in Japan they have this term called hafu, which means half Japanese, half something else. And it's interesting to see how, people who are Japanese but also something else, like Moroccan or German or Irish or whatever other ethnicity you think. You bought a bunch of fire runes or what? Yes, I did. I bought a bunch of fire runes and bought a bunch of mine runes, and it's been great. And so I am eventually going to do Family Crest. I know you guys are going to, until I'm well, hopefully not 6 feet under, but um, you know, I think once I'm done with the fire and mine runes, I'll eventually get my stats up to do Family Crest eventually, and Lost City too. That's another one. Honestly, I believe a lot of Asian families are very private and respectful. Definitely, 100%, 100%. Even my dad's side of the family is like that too, because I told you, my dad and my uncle Herman. Okay, so my dad, he has Irish and Norwegian and Scandinavian and all that. He has even a bit of North African, like related to like Egyptian, indigenous North Africans, and he has Native American ancestry too, Native Japanese American. But he literally looks like the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, like the former Prime Minister. I tell my dad, when I look at him, it's like you look just like him, Dad. Really. It's not a bad thing though. And my Uncle Herman, he looks like he recently had so RPG. So my Uncle Herman had a granddaughter or grandchild recently, and the grandchild's name is Bjorn. And so I thought I would tell you that because I know you connect a lot with your Norwegian ancestry. Uh, but yeah, so he had a grandchild. I think he was with his daughter Summer at the medical or at the doctor's office. So, um, but yeah, no, her Uncle Herman looks like Nobu Uematsu from one of the musical developers for the Final Fantasy series. That's why I call him Uncle Japanese or Uncle Cherokee Japanese Herman, because that's what he reminds me of, and so it's kind of neat. Um, but yeah, like I've been able to understand it a bit better through my dad's side of the family and also through meeting the Japanese and well, also other Asians. And I think that, um, and I also notice it sometimes with the natives too, like the Native Americans. Like Uncle Herman tells me, the Cherokee tend to prefer not to be bothered, and that reminds me a lot of the Asians too, because really there's a lot of shared ancestry between both. Um, I mean, I enjoy my privacy as well. Even my mother knows that about me. But I also like talking to people. I also like sharing because I think it's important for us to share. And I think I've noticed that a lot about with the Asians and even some of the natives that they struggle to share for whatever reason. They struggle to, and I notice that can sometimes manifest into depression even for some of them, and I can see it in some of their work. And there's a series on Netflix I really like, Frontier. It's very good. Oh, nice. Um, So yeah, let's see. Let me. Hopefully, I don't high alch the wrong thing. Last time I high alched my fire staff by accident, or my air staff, or that wasn't pleasant. Let's see. Irish native, Scottish, English, around fur trade, based in Americas. Yeah, yeah. I don't. I probably told you RPG, but yeah, my uncle Herman has spent 40 years with the Cherokee in North Carolina. He even asked me too. He said, "Are you willing to be an enrolled member with the Cherokee, with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians? Because they have a blood quantum with the Cherokee, which you have to be like 25% or more Cherokee to be an enrolled member, and that means like getting a check and all that, all the benefits." 2 or 3 seasons, hoping they make another one was a great watch. Oh, nice. My Uncle Herman is an exception, by the way. So he may not be 25% Cherokee, even though he is definitely at least probably 30% Native Japanese American plus. However, he does get benefits from the tribe because he taught at their local school, years ago, and so I think he gets benefits, medical benefits from them, which I thought was cool. Um, you may look, you may like it if you're into shows. Yeah, I'll have to see. A bit of drama to fill the gaps, but pretty historical feats. Oh, nice. Yeah, so when my Uncle Herman said, are you willing to be an enrolled member? And I said, well, I'm already enrolled through the Rainbow or the Arcoides or the Rainbow. Um, I'm already enrolled through my ancestry, through what Uncle Herman would say is DNA. And so when I would tell him that, he would call me Celtic healer. He said, you're the Celtic healer. And I'm glad he calls me that because, for me, I've tried to understand the natives best I can. I've tried to understand the Japanese. I've tried to understand other Asian groups, even Polynesians to an extent. And they have their ways. They have their ways. That's what Uncle Herman says. The Cherokee have their ways. But I also try to show him, there's other ways too that you can also that can temper or that can help balance, the ways of Eld and the ways of and uh, and so yeah, I think um, the one thing I've noticed, not only just with the Cherokee, because Uncle Herman told me that the reason why the Cherokee and the Melungeons don't get along, the Melungeons, by the way, are Cherokee too, but see, it kind of reminds me of the Asians. They have a thing called Wasians and Blasians. So what it is the Wasians are Asian and European descent usually. And then the Blasians are typically Asian and then Black African ancestry. And so it seems like they don't always get along. Uh, and that seems to also cross over to the natives. And so what I would tell them, well, you're both still Asian either way. You know, um, I know some of them may not like that, but you know, I just kind of laugh. You're either both Asian or you're both native, native Asian or however you want to say it, Native American, Um, but I think they've gotten better over time too. They've gotten better trying to see how they connect together, so that's a good thing. And I think that's why in Japan they use the whole Hafu thing. But I think they even do the same thing with the natives. And my Uncle Herman knows someone. They call them first generation natives. His partner is Loretta. And so Uncle Herman tells me that Loretta, I think she's of Scottish descent, but she's also native Cherokee. But what happens with them is if your ancestry with the Cherokee gets to like a certain percentage, like if you if your ancestry starts becoming more Europe or a certain extent of European or African that's more than the native, they start to want to push you off their tribe, or they want to start to say, okay, no more benefits, um, no more this, no more that. And it's been hard for her because I know she still says, well, I'm still Cherokee, it's still part of my ancestry. Um, but yeah, the Cherokee, they tend to, especially Eastern Band, they tend to be very finicky about that. But I also see the same thing with the Japanese too. Like, if you're a hafu or a half Japanese, half something else, they also can get a little bit finicky too. But I think over time it will change. Maybe it's more of an native or East Asian thing. But so that's why I try to remind them of the rainbow or arcoiris or the rainbow. For those who don't know, arcoiris is Spanish for rainbow, or iris is ancient Greek and Trojan for rainbow. And so, um, the thing is that if we get stuck in this mentality that you have to always only be Cherokee or always be Japanese, then you kind of lose sight of what really matters. You lose sight of your of a different path, of a different future, and I think the natives and the Asians, like the Japanese, they've understood that from me a little bit better just by talking to me. And of course, Maffy also has learned a lot from me as well. She always says, other than the Asian, you sound very Celtic or very Scottish, and the thing is, I'm happy or I'm blessed to be connected to so many different people because it's helped me see the world in so many different angles and see how different people think. It's like looking at a gem. You look at a gem, and that is my name. You pass light through the gem, and sometimes you get like a rainbow or like a prismatic effect from the gem. And that's how I think of myself. I think of that prismatic effect. Um, Here's a shot in the dark, lol. All right, uh, go for it. Call it one of the RPG's theories. All right. Pirates are Vikings that didn't want to give up the ways. I could see that too, yeah. Yeah, hey, that's why I love giving out the eye patches, and I also I love the One Piece film as well, or not film. Well, they have a live action, but I also like the series One Piece, which is about pirates. Like I'm sure you know about Monkey D. Luffy, and the live actor from Monkey D. Luffy. They wanted to get someone from Brazil, but they ended up with a Mexican that was I think part native and part Spanish, like a kind of an evenish mix, I think. I watched, yeah. In Mexico they would use the word mestizo, or in French they would say métis, I think, in Canada. Yeah, I love Luffy, and I think even that's what the creator Oda, Eiichiro Oda of One Piece said. He said, "I never thought I would find someone that was like Luffy, but then I found you," and I was like, "Hey, that's Luffy." And I like him as an actor. I know some people they have their own opinions, and that's fine. Uh, but yeah, I like him. I like Zoro. I like Nami. I like Sanji. Sanji's interesting. Sanji, he had like a British mum, and he had like I think like a father that was Arab that lived in the Canary Islands, which is interesting. But he speaks perfect Spanish. He probably speaks Spanish better than I do. That is part of my ancestry, so. And yeah, I think coming together, is such a beautiful thing, and I think that film definitely shows that. The idea of coming together, as a family or even as a crew. Um, and so that's why I always tell Uncle Herman, you know, I think he's agreed with me over time. He's talked about open borders instead of, or open boundaries rather than enrollment cards and all that. Because the natives in the U.S. and I think Canada have boundaries for where they live. But no, he's kind of agreed with seeing beyond those boundaries. Um, and yeah, I think you know you had the Vikings, but you also had a lot of people don't mention them, but they should be mentioned more. Is the Mediterranean people, the Greeks, the Phoenicians, the Trojans, the Aurelians. They were all just also like the Norsemen. They also sailed the oceans, but they sailed in the Mediterranean. So they were kind of like I don't know if you want to say the Vikings of Southern Europe, but they were the Mediterranean, but they also uh, were very skilled in navigating the oceans as well. And so that's why I always say Rainbow, but I also say Arcoides, never to forget the ancient Greek and Latin and also Spanish roots. And also Celtic as well, because they say Proto-Celtic and Proto-Italic are related. I think that's why they said the Romans, when they would try to fight the Celts, they would sometimes issue orders in Greek and not, well, the Greek after Mycenaean Greek, because Mycenaean Greek honestly sounds more similar probably to Spanish and Proto-Celtic, but the ancient Greek dialect that came after Mycenaean Greek, after the Sea People. They said to issue orders in Greek and not in Latin, because if they said it in Latin, then the Celts would understand them better. Because really, the Romans, probably some people don't want to hear this, the Romans really genetically are related to the Celts, but the Romans had mixed with other people that made them Romans. So, that there was a time where the Celts and them were one, but then they mixed with different people. Maybe Greeks could be one group, maybe other people, um, maybe even, you know, North African, that might have had, well, the Phoenicians, but maybe even well, Carthaginians, um, you know, maybe even potentially North African Jews, not necessarily Ashkenazi, because hear that until you can hear that until you're blue in the face, and then it's just like saying, it's like telling, a lot of people here, you can be more than just German, or you can be more than Ashkenazi and all that. But anyways, I digress from that because I know that's its own other can of worms. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I think most people don't know about. I think when they talk about Rome, they just talk about the glory of what they think Rome is without understanding the full context or, what came before or how it was originally founded, all that. So, but I think democracy is something to definitely value and to definitely, treasure, to definitely, um, especially in the world we live in now, especially in the U.S., That's why sometimes I feel bad, for some people in Europe, them seeing what's going on here and even Oceania. And I hope in time they'll get a bit of a better positive image. Hopefully, through Americans like me, because technically I would be considered an American. Well, an American in multiple ways, not only a citizen, but even actually, native Japanese American ancestry connected to this land. I think Uncle Herman one time he asked me, are you saying I can be an American? And I told him, you're probably one of the most American people I've met. I mean, you've had ancestors, part of your ancestry, goes through these lands for thousands of years. You've been with the Cherokee for over 40 years. I know you're a civil rights advocate and all that, and you know the law really well. He took a case all the way to the Supreme Court, because he was having medical issues, and the floor, I guess whoever was in charge of the medical sector in Florida, at first they didn't want to help him, but then he took his case to the Supreme Court, and he eventually won that case. And so I tell him, you're probably as American as I know. He may not be the quote unquote what people think is the stereotypical average American. I know Maffey might use the word Yankee, though of course there's another word to say because I know some people find that offensive. But yeah, I think a better term would be stereotypical average American. I'm sure most people could understand that. But that's a good thing that he's not the stereotypical average American, because that stereotype tends to be pretty negative. Like people think, you know, that most Americans in their mind think that they think, you know, they don't know where English came from. They don't know where Spanish came from. They think that Earth is flat. They're gonna tell you, you'll go to hell if you believe in anything other than what they believe in, you know, which can be pretty one-dimensional in some cases if you're not careful. Um, so yeah, it's you try to give a better representation, better representation of what Americans or people who were born in the U.S. or the Americas can be, you know. They can come in all different shapes and colors. Well, so tacky. So you may not believe this, but you can ask Bjorn from Norway. There are other Americans that go to his channel. They tell him you're going to hell because you believe in Odin, and then they also say they believe the Earth is flat. Literally, they'll tell him straight to his face. The Earth is not a sphere; it's flat. They'll say that to him. Not just, you can ask him. You can ask him. You can ask Bjorn that because, and then he will say, people with an IQ higher than their shoe number, which I feel bad, but they would know that the Earth is not flat, and so that's what happens. They can think that. Um, I would like to hear from these people or person. I think it's more than one person, believe me. Um, uh, and I'm trying to think what else they would say to him. They would say, oh yeah, people would say, yeah, why don't you think apparently a lot of smart people think that there was this guy. Yeah. A lot of people also tell Bjorn that when he criticizes and I'll just use this as another kind of substitute. When he criticizes oh, hold on, Paul D. Jung of the St. Louis Cardinals, he was the smartest player on the team and thought that. Hmm, interesting. Um, when he criticizes the Raging Orange currently in the House of White, he they get mad and then they say, if you think Odin is so great, why don't you think the same of the Raging Orange? So, who is Bjorn? Bjorn is a Norwegian YouTuber. He was born in Norway. He's of Norse and Celtic ancestry predominantly. And he does a lot of videos on Vikings and Norse history, but he also does podcasts too on current events. And so he these are some people that come to his channel. I feel like if they try to come to Norway, they would try to go to his house and Well, they probably wouldn't. They would probably some of them probably wouldn't come out alive because he has the Dane's axe. So yeah, it's it's interesting. That's all I gotta say. But yeah, no, I just the reason why I'd listen to his channel is I like to see the perspective of what other people from Europe think. How they view everything that's going on and all that. So, or other areas too. But here, but yeah, maybe Tacky, you can ask him. Uh, you can say, hey, who are the people that think that the Earth is flat on your channel? So I thought it was 2004 players. Oh no 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 no! It's not RPG's friend Bjorn. No no no! It's a guy from Norway who doesn't like to be called Buddy, which I can understand. I think it's just when a lot of people call him Buddy, it tends to be derogatory. So. But yeah, like I think that it's good. I think that we talk to people, especially that from other parts of the world, or even especially if we have ancestors from Europe. It's good to talk to them just to see their perspective on things and how they view the world and how they kind of go about things. And I know my dad had some admixture related to like Danish Viking and Norwegian Viking, a Danish Donnie, and maybe I think that's why he's probably called Siggy, as well as his dad. And and honestly, he reminds me a lot of my grandfather, who I never met on my dad's side, but they just both have this stern look about them. Not always a bad thing, but and by the way, I want to tell you, Taki, and anyone else who's watching this channel, there's nothing wrong with having different opinions. Like, if you really believe the Earth is flat, then that's your belief or that's your opinion. But don't say to someone, well, you know, you're either going to believe the Earth is flat or else, or you're either going to believe, or you're either going to not believe in Odin or else, kind of a thing. Or you're either gonna worship the orange or else, I know that sounds weird, but some of these people are like that. Um, it reminds me of Thorin from Final Fantasy Heaven's Ward, that he wanted to be the God King, and didn't turn out too well for him, but. The thing is, if you worship the orange, that's okay. That's why we live in a democracy. But don't tell everyone else, worship the orange or else. Yeah, yeah. Like, there's a difference between saying I like spaghetti and then saying, well, You better like spaghetti, or else I'm gonna put you on a pitchfork or something. Because of course, you can like spaghetti. I like spaghetti, but if someone told me, you're gonna like spaghetti or else, I would say, well, we're not gonna do it like that. I probably would still eat spaghetti anyways, but I would just say, well, we're not gonna do it like that. And then the thing about them telling him, you're not Norse because you're see in my head, I have to think to myself, do these people? I'm not political. It's like the South Park episode or DB or church sandwich. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Well, regarding ancestry, I just kind of think to myself when people say things like about him and his connection to Odin. I think in the back of my mind, aren't some of these people though? Don't they also have like Norse ancestors too? I mean, you don't have to per se, but it's just something I would think about. It's like, you know, maybe they don't even know their ancestry. But, but yeah, I think that's why um, it's been interesting hearing from RPG because I know RPG, he knows a lot about. Well, I know he said he was ethnically Norwegian and knew a fair bit about his roots, and um, I think it's a good thing. Of course, talking to Maffey has helped as well with that. Um, but how about you, Taki? Do you um, know much about your ancestry, or I know that might be a weird question, but the cats is helping me save spot. Trace my obscure last name like 500 years, just England, basically. Oh boy. Well, no, it's not a bad thing. I just kind of think about like what Mafi and Roy would say. Um, because I've watched videos of people, other Americans, going to England, for example, and it's just interesting how it all kind of goes about at times. Moved to US like in like 1900. Oh wow. Okay. Well, yeah, well maybe in time you might be able to, well, if it ever interested you, you could always learn about maybe if you're connected to certain different ethnic groups in England. Was you have the Celts and you have the Anglo-Saxons and the Franks and the Vikings and all sorts of different people. Late 1800s. Oh wow. I knew someone from York or Yorkshire that felt very connected to the Norse. So have you ever wanted to Or have you ever visited England or Britain, or did you ever want to visit there, or anywhere else for that matter? Let's see here. Never been to Europe, a lot of Central America. Oh, nice. Well, that's good at least. Have you enjoyed your time there, or have you enjoyed your time in well, in a lot from the countries in Central America, or really it's part of North America, but um, have you enjoyed your stay or your visit in some of those countries? I know there's Honduras and uh, Guatemala and those areas, or of course Costa Rica, Panama as well. I think Belize might be another one. I live in Austin, and we have a lot of cruises here, so I enjoy cruising and seeing the islands. Oh, I see. So you took a cruise. I see. I've taken some cruises as well. I did one in Alaska, and I did some around the Caribbean. Um, but I have also visited Alaska as well. You know, I took a road trip there, and that was really fun. That was back when I was living with my mum, and she had her German girlfriend B, who I think was born in Germany but emigrated here. And I think Maffy and maybe RPG will love this story too. Maybe you will too, Taki, and anyone else watching. So, we were like in the Arctic Circle in Dead Horse, and it was like 500 miles from like civilization, any form of civilization other than this oil rig. And so, because there's a lot of oil in Alaska, and so my mum made friends with some of the oil workers, and her German girlfriend was sitting in the car, kind of judging her, saying, I didn't mean to do that. Judging her because I guess she couldn't be bothered to talk to the workers. So my mom, she becomes good friends with one of the oil workers, and they give her all this high quality food from the refrigerators because I think they get really good food, being up there. And so when my mom and I got all this food, her German girlfriend was like, "Where's my third?" And then my mom was like, "What do you mean, where's your third? You didn't even come to help us. You're sitting there, and, judging me, and you didn't even come to help." So yeah, my mom, my mom honestly reminds me more of the French, even though her ancestry would be part Spanish. She reminds me a lot of the French and the some of the British or some of the English even. Just the way she carries herself. I wouldn't really say mm, if it's German, it's definitely not stereotypical German for sure, definitely. And that's why like I think I connect a lot with like Maffy to an extent too because and Rowie, well at least Maffy for sure because I think Rowie sometimes reminds me a bit of my dad's side, but Maffy just sometimes the way she expresses herself it just reminds me of my mom sometimes. Um, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. My mom, she helped a lot of people. Even when she was a doctor, she helped a lot of different patients. And my mom, she always had like she always has had a witty way of speaking. One thing she would say is, "Don't let the door hit you in the face," which I love. Because people say it like don't let it hit you in the bottom, but I like the other one more. I like don't let it hit you in the face because it's almost in her head she's thinking they opened the door and then it slams back into their face and I, got, I think it's like a good comeback, you know. I mean, wouldn't want them to get hurt per se, but you know. She just has an elegance, you know, the way she speaks. Just a finesse, as it were. I think my friend Ben's a lot like that too. The way he speaks, he carries himself with a lot of elegance. So that's why when some people say that Europeans are all the same, or especially because I know sometimes some of the natives or even some of the Japanese or other Asians, they sometimes they can get a bit of tunnel vision. I tell them, well, it's not entirely the case. You know, there's a reason why there's Spain and Portugal and France and Britain and Ireland and all that. So, but yeah, have you guys? I haven't done any polls yet this stream. I think I'll have to do that. Be sick. Oh, not a problem. I'm just no worries. I just wanted to see, you know, if how many of you guys have enjoyed the stream. You know, for whoever's still here. I'm probably gonna eventually end the stream soon because it's getting late here. It's past 2 in the morning. A little bit later than that, so probably going to eventually take a bath and get some sleep. Oh, no worries, it's fine. Either or. You can tell me your change in answer if you want in the chat, by the way, Taki, so I can keep that on account. Seems to be fairly positive. Let me see how much dehyde and bones I've gotten in adamant ore, because we've gotten quite a bit. No clue scrolls yet, but eventually. Or no D-spear either. You know, I'm kind of laughing because I think if my mom's Scottish Australian friend Josephine was up there in that oil rig, she would have been talking to the oil workers too, just like my mom. Well, he would have been in that car, that van. Then that'd be them both with the food. It'd be great. Hey, if anything, they're at least, you know, smart enough and have good social skills to be able to do that, you know? It also got me a bath as well. Oh, we got 76 D high, that's pretty cool. And 76 bones. Okay, so yeah, we've been at it for a wee while, haven't we? Okay, so probably one more trip and then that'll be good. I'm running out of fire runes though, so might have to buy more eventually. If anyone has fire runes, let me know, because maybe I'll even ask Mystic Mime if he's selling them. I don't think he's on right now. I'll send him a message on Discord. Uh, hey Wes, glad to see you on the stream. How much do you pay for fires? Okay, so Mystic Mime gave me a really good deal for fires. He sold me 12,000 fire runes for 12.5 GP each. I know that might seem a little bit low, though I did buy a whole bunch from him. I don't know if you'd be willing to do something like that. Like, I don't know, for 5,000 fire runes. I don't know if you'd be willing to do like 60k or something, or like, let me check. Like 5,000, like 62k or something, 60 or even 62 500. If you're not, if not, it's okay. But yeah, that's what he did for me. You know, Josh Brown, he's got 300k. Well, if he's willing to do a good deal too, that'd be awesome. Or if you're fine with it. Um, I sent a message to Mystic Mime. He's willing to do the good deal on or great deal on Fire Runes again, because yeah, that's one other reason why I've been doing Fire Strike too, is because of the really good deal he did with Fire Runes. Yeah. But eventually when I do Family Crest quests, I will probably change to Windbolt. So that will come. Don't worry. Eventually I'll probably upgrade. I might still alternate between Fire Strike and Windbolt, but if I continue getting really good deals on Chaos runes, then I'll probably stick to Bolt Magic eventually. How long have you been streaming for? Oh, over 3 hours. Wow. No wonder we have so many Dehyde and um, Dragon Bones. Oh, let me message Avatar. Oh, no, no, he's off. Okay. Let me see who's buying Dragonhide. Okay. I can't sell my fires really unless it's a normal price so I can buy back. No worries, that's fine. I'll just ask Mystic Mime. He's really hooked me up with some really awesome deals, and I'm thankful. Other people have as well. Yeah, but if it's over, okay. How about 80 plus? Mystic is the guy for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So sure, just let me know. Okay. I love this song because it reminds me of pirates. With a good aspect of pirates. Yeah. I got a Marinzo. D8 combat. Well, I gotta post this meme because I find it funny, and I think you guys might find it funny, especially Maffy. Hold on, I'll put it here. Here we go. Let's see. All right, let's see here. Check something. the song. You know, the good thing with Bjorn from Norway is that, well, first off, he tried to apologize for what happened during the Viking raids. Of course, you know, we all make mistakes, even, even, you know, myself, but, you know, it's always nice to heal things, and he also said that he always talks about, like, I guess Britain being like this beautiful green island. It's almost like how some people talk about Ireland being the Emerald Isle. And I think it's a good thing that he can understand other cultures, you know, other people other than Scandinavia. First, because of course, you know, Scandinavians have a rich history, but so do other parts of the world, including the parts of Europe. It's always nice to see that. Honestly, when I play Runescape, it makes me think a lot of like a mixture of Spain, France, Britain, and Ireland. Definitely like a lot of Western Europe. And of course, Scandinavian too, but no, just the region kind of reminds me a lot of like Western Europe. Okay, let me see. I don't know what you guys kind of get when you play RuneScape, but it's always been one of my favorite games. It's something I've always kind of enjoyed. Oh shoot, my bad. Good thing I looked. Hey, Andruk. Hope you're doing well today, or rather tonight. Glad to see you in the stream. You know, one of my favorite characters in Dragon Quest 11, if anyone's played that game before, his name is Hendrik. And I think I'm actually related to a Hendrickson. That was pretty cool. Glad you could join the party for a wee bit longer before I end the stream. Oh, nice. Hope you had a restful sleep. I'm about to probably hit the hay here soon. Oh, I got two Taromins and one Marin's Hill. That's nice. 51 HP. Hopefully the stream resolution is still alright for you guys. Looks like I got a bit of an error message here. So probably just one more. Okay. All right. Oh no, Morgan. He logged out. Hopefully he logs back in. No, we can always sell it to him another time. It's kind of getting late. Oh, someone's buying Ranger boots for 15 mil. See if PK's on. Yep. Oh, he's back. There we go. All right. Let's see. Oh, did he? That's interesting. Might be a random event occurrence that might happen in 2004Scape versus regular old school. Yeah, and you know the genie, if you don't talk to him in this version of the game, he drops all your stuff, which is pretty bad. Hey V2K. I honestly don't know. I'm preparing for rares. All I know is that they're coming out soon, though. So that's good to hear. I also want to let you know if you were one of the people who has been asking me to eventually do Family Crest Quest, I just got 5,000 Chaos Runes from Mystic Mine for 400k. So whenever I eventually do that quest, I'll be full prepared to use Wind Blast eventually. Or Wind Bolt, not Blast, yeah. Ooh, got a Cosmic Talisman. I think that's a rare one. I think people... Oh, I got two Cosmic Talismans now. If anyone wants it, or would like to purchase one, let me know. Yeah, well, I'm thinking of using Windbolt first and see how that goes because Windbolt hits a max of 12. I could use Firebolt as well too. But if I do that, I would just need 3 air runes. So, or 3 air runes, 4 fire runes. So I could spend, if I got a really good deal on fire runes, that could work, or a really good deal on air runes. But if not, I'm fine just also using Windbolt too. Because Windbolt still, I think, maxes 12, which is so decent. I can showcase Windbolt versus Firebolt. This is true. Yeah. If I can get a super good deal on Fire Runes from Mystic Mime or someone else, definitely consider. Not enough for me to leave. Okay. I think 84 is pretty good, but I guess still not looking for more. I don't I don't know if he's power leveling prayer, but he might be. Sounds decent to me. Oh, oops, my bad. Gift for you. Oh, no worries. I'll give you Alright, so I think I'm gonna end the stream there. I think we did a pretty good run today. Hope you guys enjoyed, hope you guys had fun watching, and I'll be off for now. Hope you guys take care.